My name is Jianhua Wang, and I'm the Senior Research Scientist and SIMS Lab Manager at Carnegie Institution for Science, Earth and Planets Laboratory. Yeah, I'm probably one of the experts in the world who can understand this machine very well. NanoSIMS is a secondary ion mass spectrometer, and it's basically a mass spectrometer. It uses some primary ions and hit your sample, and then we extract the secondary ions from it to measure its isotope composition or measure the concentration of some trace elements. This instrument is very important because it can do a very precise isotopic measurements, and it also has a very low detection limits. So you can detect some concentration of a ppb level, so parts per billion level. With these kind of instruments, we can find a lot of information about how the Earth was formed, how the solar system was formed, how the material on the Earth would cycle, and all these knowledges help us to understand how the solar system works, how the Earth works. One of my favorite project was I measured some sample return from the Genesis mission, and it was measuring the solar wind for 2 years and brought it back. When the spacecraft came down to the Earth, it crashed, and all the samples were contaminated. So we have to get it cleaned, but there's still some contamination on the surface. And we have to use this instrument because it has a very high spatial resolution. We can use it to find a clean area to avoid any contamination from the Earth, to measure what's in the solar wind. So NanoSIMS has been used to do a lot of research in planetary science, and we can also use this instrument to study presolar grains, and they are very tiny material that was formed before the solar system was formed. We can get those presolar grains from meteorites, and they are very small, mostly 1 micron or less. And you have to use this instrument to study them. This instrument has a lot of high voltage lenses, a lot of electronics, and also has motorized aperture slits. So it could break anytime. Anything could happen. So we need to figure out what happened and how to fix it all the time. My favorite memory was when we used this instrument to measure the water on the moon. So previously we thought that the moon doesn't have much water, but using this instrument we did some micro-analysis to study how the moon glass, how much water was in the glass, and we did the profile of it. Then we realized that the glass had a lot more water than was kept in there, because the moon is under vacuum. Under volcanic eruption, the glass would lose their water, but it still kept some water. And used this instrument and some modeling, we determined that moon had similar water as our mantle. We have 2 ion probes. One is this NanoSIMS, and we also have another one called 6F. It's a very conventional ion probe. We use that one to do a lot of like the volatiles, like hot water, CO2, sulfides, fluorides, and chlorides in minerals. And we use that one to study, actually, some of the moon rocks we studied was using the other instrument. When I did my PhD, we had a very old ion probe at the University of Chicago, and I started to work with the ion probe at that time. And after that, I also did a postdoc at the UCLA, and they had one of the big instruments similar to this. That was one of the original one, and it had a lot of problems. So when I was doing my postdoc, I had to help fixing the problems and rewrite the software. That's how I got into instrumentation. I have other talents, like I can cook and do a lot of gardening at home. I can make puff pastry. It's a Chinese pastry. It's called red red bean egg yolk pastry, yeah, baking. But nano is much more complicated than